Okay, so I want to talk about pain in your nervous system and how this functions as analogy for healing, physically, but also crossing over into how it's kind of a picture of how we heal mental from mental, emotional, psychological kinds of trauma in particular. So one of the things, so physiology, it can inform us and give us this picture of healing. So that's where I want to go. Thanks for tuning in. So your pain, your system of pain in the body is regulated by your nervous system. Now, your nervous system basically is the part of your body that perceives and interprets what is happening to you. So your brain that is housed in your skull, kind of like Winston Churchill in his bunker underneath London during the Blitz, is somewhat isolated from what's happening out there. Therefore, you have neurons that have receptors that pick up on information and send the message to the brain for the brain to figure out, okay, what is this? Now, in terms of your sensory stuff, on a practical matter, your body adapts. Let me give you an example of this adaptation of sensory neurons. Let's pretend you're cooking, and you're cooking with a lot of garlic, which has a very strong odor. And so that strong aroma that initially causes the receptors in your nose to send a signal to your brain that there's something pungent that you are experiencing. The brain gets the message, the brain interprets the message and goes, okay, garlic, sounds like garlic. And after a while, something called adaptation will occur. So as you've been cooking in the same environment, if you've ever noticed, you're still chopping the garlic, but you're no longer sensing the strong, pungent odor of the garlic. What has happened is your brain is like, duh, you are still smelling garlic, so unless something changes, I'm just gonna not, continue. The neuron basically adapts, and the brain's like, little too much information going on, can't perceive everything, so only tell me something changes, right? And what'll happen is you're in that environment, you stop smelling it, you walk outside to get the mail, and then come back in and re-smell the garlic that you were smelling all along in the kitchen, but you stopped smelling it because your nose, the receptors adapted. That's called adaptation, and that occurs in your nervous system quite readily, especially when something that you're perceiving in quotes, is not harmful. But what's unique in your system of pain is the system of pain doesn't do this. You don't really adapt. In fact, if you adapt, there's adaptation in the other direction. Let me give you an example of this. You're cooking at the stove, again, in the kitchen, and some water from the boiling pot of water splatters onto your left hand. You burn it. Now, the thermoreceptors get triggered. Those are in your hand. In addition to pain receptors. And you have various kinds of pain receptors, some slow, some fast, etc. But anyways, the signal gets sent to the brain. It gets interpreted as, there's something hot. That burns. Ouch, that hurts. So then let's say you take, cold water, ice cube, you run it under cold water and, adjust to the fact that your hand was burned. Let's say it was a minor burn and it didn't blister. You stop feeling the pain after a while, not because of adaptation, but rather there's no more stimulus. You're not further being burned, and it was a minor burn to begin with, and you put cold water on it, and that helped. But it's not, all of the healing has not happened. And in fact, one thing has changed. You have become hypersensitive, hyperalgesic to the pain in that particular location. So here's what happens. Later that night, you've forgotten about the pain because it was pretty minor. You hop into the tub to take your hot bath that you are accustomed to doing with your glass of wine and stick your left hand in the water, and your left hand perceives that this is too hot. However, Your right hand, that was never burned, does not have such a perception, and in fact contradicts the message that your left hand is sending to the brain, which is, this is too hot, get it out of here. This hand can hold the glass of wine. Your right hand, however, is like, no, it's fine. Temperature is just perfect. What's happened? Well, that left hand, the pain receptors have actually lowered their threshold for experiencing pain, and they've done this so that there is protection in this hand. It's going to more readily fire the neurons there, the pain ones in particular, and now you're going to know much more quickly if some kind of hot, even mildly warm temperature is around, is being fired, so that you can protect this hand that is as of yet not finished healing. I think this is a perfect analogy for what happens to us on a mental, emotional, psychological level when we're healing from those kinds of traumas. Let's pretend you were in a relationship with a narcissist or a toxic personality. You're sensitive to particular kinds of pain. Your being has lowered the threshold such that you are hyper aware of this kind of thing. Now, some would label this, we want to pathologize it and call it, emotional dysregulation. Let's say you have borderline traits, etc. What I would encourage you to do is to recognize, take the analogy from the body in terms of, you're sensitive to this particular kind of thing. This is a temporary lowering of the threshold. You will not always be triggered to experience pain. Let me give you an example. Let's say you're sensitive in particular to manipulative behaviors. You may even perceive manipulative behaviors in places and scenarios where other people would not. Let's say you go into the grocery store and you perceive that the clerk is being manipulative. OMG, right? She may or may not be. It might be that 9 out of 10 people would not say her behavior is manipulative, but because you're hyper aware, hypersensitive to this kind of thing, because that's the thing you experienced as trauma on a psychological, mental, emotional level, for a while you're going to see this sort of thing out there in the world, and it's okay. Probably the best response would be to look at it just as you would the physical healing. Okay, I see that I'm sensitive in this way to this particular thing. Be curious about it. Get your hand out of the hot water and hold the glass of wine with that hand, right? Hold the glass of wine while you're taking a bath, as opposed to overreacting and thinking, wow, I'm just always going to have this problem with this hot hand. This hand is too hot, always. And to spin it into this bigger thing that it is, other than information to help you heal. It's there so that you can protect it, so that you can recognize the sorts of things you need to explore on your healing journey. Okay, I need to understand what manipulation is. Maybe I need to get a sense of what that looks like in other contexts and environments, so that in the future I can be protected, because perhaps I wasn't that protected in that way to begin with, and now it's amped up. Those are the kinds of that's the kind of information that we can glean from this scenario, and that's exactly what we do with the body. On a physiological level, we take the information, we go, okay, pull the hand out of the tub, okay, baby it for a few days, watch out for heat while this recovery process happens, but it's not the end of the world. That threshold being decreased so that it fires more readily, so that it's more sensitive, it's not going to last forever. Eventually it's going to go back up and be re-regulated like the rest of the body. Same thing with the HPA axis. It is going to shift to being less trigger sensitive, to being less thrown off, and there are all sorts of things that can be done in order to facilitate that healing, but part of it is just to listen to the information and not overreact to the information it's giving you. Okay? So, thanks for tuning in. That's my spiel on that. There'll be more of these coming at you because I realize how much I love physiology and how it really it can function like a roadmap, like a guide to other forms of healing. I mean, we're holistic beings. So there you have it. Audio.